Back then, Skyby used a pair of hands to secure Theo Chin's smooth path in life, as well as a marriage that seemed perfect in the eyes of outsiders. Decades later, in the special care ward, Theo Chin was on the verge of death. Sky, I'm here, Skyby replied softly. Theo Chin's murky eyes stared at the ceiling, as if seeing the distant past through the white wall. If only you hadn't saved me. Skyby trembled all over, tears streaming down her face. She thought he was feeling sorry for her, regretting her crippled hand, and still grieving for her in his final moments. However, she did not know, the final thought in Theo Chin's heart was not sorrow for her sacrifice, but a profound, lifelong regret that had been suppressed. 01. Amid the violent jolts and piercing roars, Skyby suddenly opened her eyes. The sight that met her eyes was not the sterile white of a hospital room, but a grey, overcast sky and dust swirling in the air. In her ears were the piercing cries for help, desperate shouts, and the dull, continuous roar of collapsing buildings. She froze, staring blankly at her own hands. Covered in mud, yet young and strong, all around her, people in green military uniforms and white medical coats were running and shouting, "Is this the earthquake site? The place that left an indelible mark on her and changed her life forever? Has she returned, reborn decades ago?" Back to the day when Theo Chin was buried, and she rushed forward without a second thought. A massive shock left her momentarily unable to think, but her body reacted faster than her consciousness, her gaze fixed directly ahead on the familiar ruins. The temporary communication post set up by the military district headquarters was now a chaotic pile of rubble. Theo Chin was underneath. Memories from a past life surged like a tide. In that previous existence, she saved Theo Chin at the cost of her hands, which could no longer hold a needle. In return, they spent decades supporting each other through thick and thin. He achieved fame and success, holding a high position and great power. She is gentle, virtuous, and devoted to her husband and children. He is the high-ranking military district commander. She is the admired wife of the commander. Yet, she also has regrets in her heart, watching former colleagues shine brightly, while she remained obscure and unaccomplished. Confined to the backyard for a lifetime, she once deeply envied them. She also wished to be as brilliant and dazzling as they were. If she could live her life over, how would she choose? Remembering how Theo Chin, on his deathbed, was still grieving over her hands, she didn't hesitate and rushed straight over. Although her previous life was filled with regrets, she never had any remorse. In this life, she still held fast to her own choice. To save him, no matter what, she had to save him. 02. She knelt on a pile of rubble, frantically digging with her bare hands, her nails instantly split, blood mingling with sand and soil. Theo Chin, hold on, she shouted hoarsely, her movements fast and urgent, as if she couldn't feel the pain. A faint response came from under the rubble, filled with obvious pain, yet carrying a strange sense of urgency. Skyby, is that you? Go, get away quickly. Skyby paused for a moment, thinking she had misheard. Did he let her go? In her previous life, she had never heard such words. This place is dangerous. There might be aftershocks. You need to leave quickly. Theo Chin's voice rose slightly, carrying an unprecedented mix of shock, anger, and a hint of fear. Skyby gritted her teeth and moved her hands even faster. No, I must save you. I don't want you to save me. Go away. Skyby's heart ached with pain. He was so stubbornly unwilling to let her ruin her hands. She wanted to say that she had returned and would not repeat the mistakes of her past life. She dug even more frantically. Skyby, I'm begging you, don't save me. Okay. Skyby's hand paused. She lifted her head and through the gaps in the bricks, met Theo Chin's eyes. Those once deep and serious eyes were now filled with bloodshot veins, swirling with a pain, a plea, and even a hint of despair that she had never seen before. I don't want to live like that for the rest of my life, he gasped. His voice fading, yet it struck Skyby's heart like a heavy hammer. Live like that for another lifetime. Like what? Those decades with her. A chill crept silently up my spine. Skyby realized that Theo Chin had also been reborn, but he was unwilling to live with her anymore. 03. Her mind was greatly shaken by Theo Chin's words. She knelt there in a daze, unable to move her hands no matter what. Over here, quickly, there are still people below. Another medical rescue team arrived. Upon hearing the shouts, Theo Chin, trapped beneath the rubble, suddenly had a glimmer of hope in his desperate and dim eyes. He mustered all his strength and called out towards the direction of the rescue team. Dr. Lin, L. Lin, I'm here, L. Lin. Skyby followed the voice and saw a female doctor in a white coat, with a slender figure and delicate features, running quickly towards them, and the way Theo Chin looked at L. Lin made Skyby's heart ache repeatedly. It's the excitement of a long-awaited reunion, the attachment of something lost and found again. L. Lin merely nodded at Skyby and immediately crouched down. Comrade, hold on, we'll get you out right away. Skyby watched as everyone quickly cleared away the rubble, and soon, Theo Chin's trapped upper body was exposed. At that moment, another violent aftershock struck abruptly. The ground trembled, and rubble continuously fell from above. Be careful, L. Lin exclaimed, wanting to shield Theo Chin, and almost at the same time, Theo Chin, whose lower body was pinned by a heavy concrete slab and unable to move, actually stretched out his arm desperately, blocking the area above L. Lin's head where rubble might fall. A fist-sized rock struck his forearm with a dull thud. He grunted, his brow furrowed tightly, yet he still maintained that protective stance. Skyby stared blankly. In her previous life, almost at the exact same spot, a rock of similar size had been thrown at her as she desperately dug for him. At that time, he was just anxiously watching, calling out her name to be careful, but he didn't reach out without any regard for himself. It turns out, the body's instinctive reactions never lie. Be careful, she shouted. The massive load-bearing stone that ultimately crushed her hands in her memory began to loosen due to continuous vibrations and started rolling toward L. Lin's location. L. Lin. Skyby saw that Theo Chin almost roared it out, completely disregarding the possibility of his pinned lower body being crushed again. He erupted with terrifying strength, forcibly turning his body to use his own back to tightly and perfectly shield the panicked L. Lin. In the small corner formed between himself and the rubble, a massive boulder scraped past his back and crashed heavily to the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust that nearly buried them both. Theo Chin let out a groan of pain, his face instantly turning as pale as paper. Cold sweat poured down, clearly indicating that his injuries had worsened. Seeing L. Lin, who was protected and safe and sound, Theo Chin smiled, looking satisfied. In their previous life, after getting married, Theo Chin became increasingly serious. She thought it was because he had become a leader and needed to be authoritative. Now it seems that was not the case. Skyby stood in place, watching the glaring scene in the dust, her eyes uncontrollably reddened, and her heart felt as if it were tightly gripped by an invisible hand, the pain so intense she could hardly breathe. So, was that it? Theo Chin's final regret was not about her sacrificing her future, but regret that her sacrifice became the price he had to pay to marry her, becoming an insurmountable barrier between him and L. Lin. The person he truly wanted to spend his life with was never her. Skyby. The only reason he married her was because she lost the use of both hands saving him. A sharp pain instantly swept over her, the truth suddenly revealed. Skyby felt that her previous life had become a joke. She thought it was a life of mutual support and happiness. But it turned out to be an inescapable shackle for Theo Chin, a lifelong regret. She silently took a step back, then another, leaving the space entirely to L. Lin. Let go, Skyby thought, in this life, he chases his light, and she pursues her dream. 04. She no longer looked in the direction of Theo Chin but turned around and walked toward her own battlefield. With the profound medical knowledge accumulated in her past life and her still agile and healthy hands in this life, she picked up that set of familiar yet unfamiliar golden needles once again. Soon, the gazes of the crowd were replaced with shock and gratitude when they saw this seemingly delicate girl, her fingertips trembling slightly as the golden needles swiftly and accurately pierced the acupoints. The once uncontrollably bleeding wound gradually coagulated, and the injured person, who had been writhing in pain, slowly calmed down. Even the breath of the critically wounded became steady under her care, and all doubts turned into heartfelt admiration. Dear girl, thank you, thank you. Just now, my leg hurt so much I felt like dying, but with that one needle of yours, it's truly miraculous. Dr. Bye, my child's fever is gone, and is sleeping peacefully now. Skyby was busy working, sweat soaking through the back of her clothes and dust smudging her cheeks, but her eyes grew brighter and brighter, that long-lost sense of fulfillment from relying on her own abilities to save lives and heal the wounded, and realizing her self-worth, seemed to be more exhilarating than the pain Theo Chin had brought her. In her previous life, she could only look up to her colleagues, who achieved success and shone brightly. She too was once a dazzling presence in everyone's eyes, but in the end, she became the chief's wife in the eyes of others, a traditional woman focused solely on supporting her husband and raising children. In this life, she will use these hands, regained once more, to make herself shine brightly and fill the regrets of her past life. 05. The latest round of emergency rescue efforts has come to a temporary halt, out of a doctor's instinct. Sky still felt she should go check on Theo Chin. She was well aware that Theo Chin was seriously injured this time, especially since he had shielded Lin, taking the full force of that huge rock, which could have caused hidden injuries to his spine and internal organs. If not treated promptly with high-quality medicinal herbs, it could easily lead to lasting complications. In her previous life, even with injured hands, she endured the piercing pain and stayed up several nights in a row, making the Bai family's ancestral bone healing and flesh-regenerating ointment to treat Theo Chin, ensuring that Theo Chin could continue to be vigorous and active on the battlefield in the future, rising step by step. In this life, her hands are intact, making the ointment particularly effortless. It was already evening when they found the temporary medical tent where Theo Chin was. Inside the tent, a kerosene lamp was lit, casting a dim yellow light, and faint, low voices could be heard. "Don't always call me Battalion Commander Chin. Battalion Commander Chin, it sounds too distant. If it weren't for you this time, my life might have ended right there." It was Theo Chin's voice, carrying an unmistakable gentleness, a stark contrast to the agitation he had shown when rejecting her earlier. Lin's voice was soft. "Please don't say that. Saving lives and helping the injured is my duty. But you, how could you be so reckless? Why did you use your body to block the rock?" Theo Chin's voice was low, yet warm. "I didn't think much at the time. I just saw the rock about to hit you, and my mind went blank. It was a reflex. Looking back now, I'm glad I blocked it. I can't let you be so reckless with yourself anymore, seeing you hurt like this. If I had to do it all over again, I would still do the same thing." Theo Chin's voice came again. If he had to do it all over again, he would still act that way. So, in the previous life, if I hadn't rushed to save him first, this scene would have played out anyway. It's laughable how she arrogantly believed that Theo Chin loved her, even regretting that she had injured her hands, and was moved to tears. Without hesitation, she followed him after his death. She took a deep breath, suppressing the bitterness in her heart, and finally lifted the curtain. The conversation inside the tent abruptly stopped. Theo Chin leaned against the makeshift hospital bed, while Lin sat by the bedside checking his bandages. Both of them looked at her at the same time. The softness that Theo Chin only showed when facing Lin instantly faded, replaced by a polite yet distant expression, so quickly that it was chilling. Lin slightly furrowed her delicate brows, her eyes carrying a hint of barely noticeable scrutiny and wariness. Sky tried her best to keep her voice sounding calm. "Theo Chin, this is my family's heirloom ointment. It has miraculous effects for reconnecting tendons and bones, dispersing blood stasis, and promoting tissue regeneration. Keep it for your use." She handed over the small clay jar. Her nails were still slightly damaged from the day's digging, and her knuckles tightened slightly as she held the clay jar. Theo Chin's gaze lingered on the ancient clay jar for less than a moment before quickly shifting away, his tone indifferent. "Thank you for your kindness, Comrade Sky, but it's not necessary. Lin will be responsible for treating my injuries, and I trust her." Sky's hand froze in midair. "Comrade Sky, after decades of mutual support, to start over again and find ourselves such distant comrades, the outstretched hand could not be withdrawn. Yet neither could it continue to be offered." Theo Chin seemed completely unaware of her embarrassment, his gaze not even meeting hers. "This ointment must be quite precious. Comrade Sky, please take it and give it to comrades who need it more." One phrase, "Comrade Sky," another phrase, "Comrades who need it more." The decades of affection between the two were now clearly and sharply separated from the present distance. Sky felt her cheeks uncontrollably begin to burn, embarrassed. Disappointed, the feeling of her goodwill being trampled, along with a cold anger at how eager he was to draw a clear line, all surged in her heart. She could even feel the gaze from Lin beside her, filled with pity or perhaps more like the scrutiny of a victor. She silently withdrew her hand and tightened her grip on the slightly cool clay pot. "Sorry to disturb you," she said softly, then turned and quickly left the tent, fleeing the place that had made her feel so embarrassed. Inside the tent, Lin's gentle voice could faintly be heard. "She meant well, and what you did really hurt her feelings," followed by Theo Chin's low but clear response. "Precisely because she meant well, we must be even clearer. We can't let her misunderstand and cause unnecessary trouble." She no longer had the heart to listen. It turned out that having been reborn, she had already become his trouble. Skyby felt a tightness in her chest. A suffocating gloom stuck there that she couldn't expel. 06. But the disaster area was plagued by frequent aftershocks, and the sharp whistles and urgent calls kept summoning her, leaving her little time to lick her wounds. She had just fastened the medical kit when anxious cries for help came from the distance. Bye, there's a child here with a ruptured aorta. Coming." She wiped the dust off her face and rushed toward the new rescue point without hesitation, shortly after she left. Due to Theo Chin's severe injuries and his father's concern about potential long-term effects for his only son, after multiple rounds of coordination, he was arranged to be transferred back to the better-equipped military hospital ahead of schedule. The higher-ups specially approved Lin's accompaniment. As the helicopter carrying Theo Chin and Lin departed, Skyby was kneeling amidst the ruins, carefully performing emergency treatment on a wounded person whose leg was pierced by a steel bar. Sweat trickled down her temples, mingling with blood and dust, yet she remained completely unaware. "Doctor, am I going to be disabled?" The wounded soldier's voice trembled, his eyes filled with fear. Skyby looked up, revealing a reassuring smile, her hands moving swiftly and steadily. "Don't be afraid, trust me. We can save your leg." She deftly applied the needle to stop the bleeding. "Since these hands of mine have returned, I must let them serve their greatest purpose." Amid the daily hustle and countless "thank you, Dr. Her heart, which had been aching because of Theo Chin, was gradually filled, expanded, and strengthened. There were still too many injured patients here who needed treatment. This was where she truly belonged. The senior leader, witnessing her covered in blood yet still administering acupuncture to save lives, couldn't help but praise Skyby. "That's incredible." Skyby just smiled and nodded. She wanted to make up for the regrets of her previous life. With the military and civilians united as one, the disaster situation was finally alleviated. The situation in the disaster area is stable, and the troops have returned triumphantly. Skyby received a commendation order from the military region for their outstanding performance. Comrade Skyby, disregarding personal safety, rescued the dying and healed the wounded. Demonstrating the noble character of a revolutionary military doctor, the words of the awarding leader echoed across the square. Thunderous applause echoed from the audience. Skyby wore a large red flower and held a medal in her hand, filled with pride and honor. In her previous life, she could only look up to the glory of others, but in this life, that honor and that light finally fell upon her. 07. After returning to the military hospital, occasionally, I would hear the nurses mention Theo Chin. They were all talking about his closeness with Lin. When they ran into her, they would immediately stop talking, and Skyby pretended not to know. In her previous life, even with her full efforts, Theo Chin still ended up with lingering effects. "Whenever it's overcast or rainy, my lower back aches faintly." In this life, he aggravated his injuries by stubbornly carrying a huge boulder to protect Lin. Theo Chin is an outstanding soldier. In his previous life, it only took him 20 years to rise to the position of top military commander in the military region, made tremendous contributions to the country and the people. Thinking of this, Skyby went to Theo Chin's hospital room. Just as her hand was raised to knock, the sound of conversation from inside made her pause. "I heard Skyby made contributions in the disaster area and received an award." It was Lin's voice, carrying a hint of barely concealed disappointment. "If I had come back a few days later, perhaps, don't overthink it." Theo Chin's voice was gentle yet firm. "Your abilities don't need a medal to prove them. Believe me, in the future, I'll have you stand in a higher place." receiving the glory that belongs to you. Skybai's fingers curled slightly. They got into a relationship so quickly. Lin's voice carried a coquettish tone. You're just trying to sweet-talk me. That's a military commendation. Theo Chin chuckled softly. Want honors? Once I'm better, I'll go to the training ground and earn them for you with real skills. My wife, Lin, will stand on the highest podium for everyone to see. Who's your wife? Lin's voice trailed off, filled with shyness. I will marry you once I recover. Skybai felt that she had come at an inopportune time. Slowly lowered her hand, and turned to leave. Who's at the door? Theo Chin's alert voice made Skybai pause in her tracks. She had no choice but to turn around and push open the slightly ajar door. It's me, Skybai. The two people in the ward looked at her with different expressions. A trace of unease flashed across Lin's face before she quickly returned to normal. Theo Chin, however, slightly furrowed his brows and spoke in a distant tone. Comrade Skybai, is there something you need? It used to be just Sky, but now it's Comrade Skybai this and Comrade Skybai that. Skybai really isn't used to it. She got straight to the point. I came to check on your injuries. This time, your injuries are unusual, especially the spinal and internal organ trauma. If not properly treated, it could easily lead to complications in the future. Thank you for your concern. Theo Chin interrupted her, his tone distant. My injuries are healing well. Elle is highly skilled, and I trust her, Skybai insisted. Theo Chin, I'm not questioning Lin's abilities, it's just that my family's medical expertise is more targeted for this kind of internal injury and hidden ailments. Let me examine you. Perhaps I can, Comrade Skybai. Theo Chin interrupted again, his brows furrowing even more deeply. I believe I made myself quite clear before. I trust Elle and I are about to get engaged, to avoid any suspicion. Please keep your distance from me. I don't want my fiancé to misunderstand and cause unnecessary trouble. Skybai was somewhat incredulous that Theo Chin could say such things. Even if they weren't going to be husband and wife, they had grown up in the same compound and shared a friendship since childhood. Is he trying to cut it off at the root? Theo Chin is still continuing. My body, I know it well. I trust my future wife. If anything goes wrong, I will bear the consequences myself. Future wife, bear it myself. But she is afraid he won't be able to bear it, Skybai persisted. Theo Chin, I came to see you out of consideration for our family's long-standing friendship and the fact that we grew up together. I mean nothing else by it. You know my family's medical skills have been passed down through generations, especially when it comes to external injuries. No need for the extra effort. Theo Chin interrupted again. I've said it before, I know my own body well enough. We grew up in the same compound, and I've always thought of you as a younger sister, but you're not my actual sister. If Comrade Skybai has spare time, she should focus her efforts on other comrades. I have Elle here with me. Skybai felt deeply embarrassed. She only wanted to ensure that such an outstanding soldier wouldn't be left with any hidden ailments, yet he saw her as a nuisance, eager to be rid of her. She looked at Theo Chin's unyielding expression, then glanced at Lin, who remained silent beside him. In the end, all her words dissolved into a bitter curve at the corner of her lips. She said softly, I understand, sorry to bother you. She turned and left, gently closing the door behind her. Turning the corner of the corridor, she faintly heard Lin's voice from the hospital room, tinged with concern. Theo, isn't this too harsh on her? The entire military district is talking about how she likes you, followed by Theo Chin's reply, so calm it was almost cold. She likes me, so I have to like her back. You know I only like you. I'm doing this to make sure she doesn't get any wrong ideas and end up upsetting you. Skybai leaned against the cold wall, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. The emotions from 2 lifetimes still made her chest feel somewhat heavy. She likes me. So does that mean I have to like her back? Unreasonable thoughts, making you angry. Fine, let's just be strangers from now on. 08. Skybai never denies that Theo Chin is a responsible and dependable person. In their previous life, even though Theo Chin liked Lin, after they got married, he firmly suppressed his feelings and stayed devoted to her for a lifetime, so much so that until her death, she never discovered that there was another woman in his heart. Therefore, in this life, he refused her firmly and thoroughly, fearing she would cling to him. He gave Lin a sense of security, and Skybai could also understand. Skybai thought it through clearly. In the previous life, no one wronged anyone, it was just a matter of choices. In this life, since Theo Chin has made his choice, she will only offer her blessings. She secretly found El Lin and handed her the ointment she had prepared. Dr. Lin. This is a traditional ointment passed down from my maternal family. It can help with Theo Chin's injuries. Theo Chin doesn't want to accept my goodwill, but I know you care about his well-being, so. Before Sky Bai could finish, El Lin immediately interrupted. Dr. Bai, I will take care of Theo Chin's health, there's no need for you to worry. I hope you will keep your distance from Theo Chin in the future and not show him such concern. You know, sometimes your concern can cause trouble for others. El Lin's words made Sky Bai feel embarrassed, but she still calmly said, I was just acting out of a doctor's duty, unable to bear seeing an outstanding soldier's future. Enough. El Lin curled her lips with a hint of mockery. Duty? There are so many injured soldiers in the entire hospital, why haven't I seen you being so dutiful to anyone else? Sky Bai, we're all reasonable people, some things are better left unsaid. Theo Chin is with me now, and I hope you can keep your distance. I don't want people to gossip and say that I, El Lin, stole your man. Miss Bai, you come from a well-off family and might not care about reputation. But my parents taught me since I was young not to ruin other people's relationships. Keep your ointment for those who need it. I'll take care of everything for Theo Chin. Sky Bai looked at El Lin's delicate yet guarded face and suddenly felt a bit weary, but she still forced the ointment into El Lin's hand. Don't worry. I'm not interested in Theo Chin. I genuinely mean well. If you really like Theo Chin, give him the ointment to try. After saying that, she didn't wait for El Lin's reaction and turned to leave, and El Lin looked at the ointment in her hand and sneered, casually tossing it into the trash. 09. Sky Bai felt a bit more at ease after giving away the ointment, taking advantage of the weekend break. She finally found time to go back to the compound to visit her parents, but before she could reach her own doorstep, she was stopped by an enthusiastic voice. Sky, oh my, I finally get to see you, Mrs. Chin, carrying a vegetable basket. Quickly walked over and without a word grabbed her hand, looking her up and down. Look at those dark circles under your eyes. You must be exhausted from working at the hospital. You've lost so much weight. She affectionately squeezed Sky Bai's wrist. Come over for dinner tonight. Auntie has made ginseng chicken soup to help nourish your body. Sky Bai instinctively tried to pull her hand back, but it was held even tighter. In the past, this kind of intimacy would have made her heart feel sweet, but now it only felt awkward. She forced a smile and said, Auntie Chin, really, there's no need. Why be so polite with your aunt? Mrs. Chin interrupted her with a chiding tone. I've watched you grow up, so why are you acting so distant with me now that you're older? Just as Sky Bai was at a loss for how to decline, a familiar voice came from behind. Mom. Sky Bai stiffened and slowly turned around. Theo Chin was seen standing not far away, leaning on a crutch, while El Lin was carefully supporting his arm. The moment their eyes met, the air seemed to freeze. Mrs. Chin's smile instantly stiffened as she looked at El Lin with clear displeasure. Leaning on his crutch, Theo Chin walked up to his mother. His gaze swept indifferently over Sky Bai without lingering, and he directly introduced to Mrs. Chin, Mom, this is El Lin, my partner. As he spoke, he gently took El Lin's hand. This is my mother. El Lin quickly stepped forward and spoke somewhat nervously. Auntie, hello. Mother Chin's expression shifted repeatedly as she looked at her son, then at El Lin. Finally, his gaze fell on Sky Bai, and he instinctively tightened his grip on her hand, seeing his mother like this. Theo Chin frowned and spoke up. Mom, Comrade Sky Bai has other matters to attend to. Don't keep her any longer. Besides, this is the first time I'm bringing my partner home. It's not appropriate to have an outsider around. Mrs. Chin had initially intended to maintain some decorum, but upon hearing her son's words, she felt a chill in her heart. Even if he had found a partner, how could he treat Sky Bai, who had grown up with him, so coldly? Moreover, Sky Bai is the daughter-in-law she has already decided on. Theo Chin, what kind of talk is that? What do you mean by outsider? In my eyes, Sky is no outsider. What's with this Comrade Sky Bai? You used to just call her Sky. What's going on between you and Sky? And what about her? Before Mrs. Chin could finish, Sky Bai quickly interrupted and took the opportunity to pull her hand back. Auntie Chin, I haven't seen my parents in a long time. I should head back now. Sky, wait, Mrs. Chin still wanted to say something, but Skyby had already turned around, almost fleeing as she quickly walked toward her own yard. Faintly, she could hear Mrs. Chin's voice, suppressed with anger. Theo Chin, what are you doing? Are you trying to make me die of anger? You and Sky, Mom, I like Elle, not Skyby. Please stop associating me with Skyby in the future, as it might cause misunderstandings with Elle. The iron gate clicked shut, leaving all the awkwardness outside with Skyby. She looked at the familiar courtyard, breathed in the familiar aroma of home-cooked food, and let out a loud shout, Mom, Dad, I'm back. The Bai family is full of joy. The Chin family, however, is filled with awkwardness. 10. Since that day, rumors have gradually spread throughout the military compound. Have you heard? The Chin family's son brought home a partner, but old Chin's wife didn't even let them through the door. If you ask me, General Bai's daughter is such a good match for Theo Chin. They grew up together, and her maternal family comes from a long line of doctors. Old Chin's wife treats her like her own daughter. Exactly, I was there that day, and when old Chin's wife saw that Dr. Lin, her face turned green with anger. We all know what Skyby has in mind. We thought the two of them would end up together. But who knew someone would come out of nowhere and ruin it? These idle remarks inevitably reached Skyby's ears. Skyby could only brazenly pretend not to hear. It was her own fault. Who told her to follow Theo Chin around like a shadow back then? The whole compound knew about Skyby's feelings back in the day, but Theo Chin was getting married, and the bride was Elle Lin. Now in everyone's eyes, she naturally became that abandoned, pitiful person. To say it wasn't awkward would be a lie. It was still somewhat awkward. Fortunately, over the decades, her skin had grown thicker. To avoid unnecessary trouble, she tried her best to steer clear of Theo Chin Elle Lin. Yet it was unavoidable to run into her. From Elle Lin's demeanor, Skyby knew it wasn't that she couldn't avoid her, but that Elle had been waiting for her on purpose. Elle Lin's expression was unpleasant, and her tone was even more impolite than last time. Skyby, what do you mean by this? You clearly promised me last time that you wouldn't bother Theo Chin anymore. So why are you still playing tricks behind my back and getting Theo Chin's mother to oppose us? Skyby frowned. I think you've misunderstood. I've never said anything to Aunt Chin that was against you too. Elle Lin sneered. Misunderstood. The whole compound is buzzing with talk that Aunt Chin only sees you as her daughter-in-law. If you hadn't said something behind my back, why would she dislike me so much? Could Theo Chin's mother not liking her really be blamed on her? Skyby was at a loss for words. Dr. Lin, I'm very busy and don't have time to get involved in your issues with the Chin family. Aunt Chin doesn't like you. You should reflect on yourself instead of coming to cause trouble for me. Elle Lin's tone was full of sarcasm. You say you're not involved, then tell me why every time I visit Aunt Chin, she brings you up, saying things like Sky has been sensible since she was a child and Sky is a skilled doctor. Skyby, if you dare to do it, you should dare to own up to it. You pretend to be magnanimous in front of Theo Chin while secretly encouraging his mother to suppress me. What exactly are you up to? Skyby rolled her eyes. Is Aunt Chin wrong? I really have been sensible since I was a child, and my medical skills are indeed excellent. What's wrong with an elder praising a younger person? Just because Aunt Chin praised me, you come to cause trouble for me. If Aunt Chin were to praise Xiao Huang a couple of times, would you go and have a discussion with it too? Who is Xiao Huang? Upon hearing Elle Lin's question, Skyby almost laughed. Xiao Huang is a stray dog in the courtyard who wags its tail at everyone. She had just casually mentioned it, but Elle Lin actually took it seriously. But if she were to tell Elle Lin that little Huang is a dog, would she think she's comparing her to a dog? Skyby quickly changed the subject. Dr. Lin, I've said it before, Theo Chin and I are just purely comrades in arms. Whatever is going on between you two has nothing to do with me. If you insist on thinking I'm scheming behind your back, then I have nothing more to say. With that, she walked past Elle Lin and prepared to leave. Stop right there. Elle Lin raised her voice behind her, causing passing medical staff to turn and look. Skyby, I hope you remember your place. Theo Chin and I have already applied for marriage registration, and I am now his fiancée. I want you to stay away from him and his family from now on, and don't show up in front of them again. Skyby was somewhat annoyed. Dr. Lin, even if you are Theo Chin's wife, I have lived in the compound for 20 years, now you're telling me not to appear in front of the Chin family. Does that mean I can't go back to the family compound anymore? What right do you have to boss me around? She kept making concessions, yet they kept pushing her further. Do you really think Skyby has a good temper? 11. She was about to turn and leave, but then she saw Theo Chin standing behind her. Theo Chin looked at Skyby with cold eyes. Comrade Skyby, I was wrong before. When you were chasing after me, I didn't clearly reject you, and I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. Now, Lin and I are about to get married. So please give her the respect she deserves. Skyby's face instantly turned red, angry. She was just telling the truth earlier. What right did Lin have to boss her around? But Theo Chin said such a thing. He couldn't possibly not know what his words implied. She represents Skyby's shamelessness, relentlessly pursuing him. What a Theo Chin! To vent Lin's anger for her and trample her dignity underfoot. The two families have such a close personal relationship. Skyby never imagined that she and Theo Chin would fall out so badly. Watching the onlookers pointing and whispering, Skyby felt both embarrassed and wronged. Since her rebirth, she had never done anything to wrong them. So why did they keep bullying her again and again? If Skyby were truly 20 years old, she would probably have been too ashamed and angry to face anyone. Having lived a second life, she was finally enraged. Battalion Commander Chin, I also want you to understand one thing. In the past, I followed you around because we grew up in the same compound, and I only treated you as an older brother from the compound. Since you feel that I have become a burden to you, rest assured, from now on, you go your way, and I'll go mine. We can just act like strangers, however. Since we are from the same compound, I will still send a wedding gift when you get married and sincerely wish you and your partner a long and happy life together. I also ask both of you not to constantly seek validation from me. You may not find it annoying, but I do. Hearing these words, Theo Chin was taken aback. He had always known that Skyby liked him. He never rejected her because their families were old friends, and he didn't want to ruin the relationship. But it was precisely because he never rejected her that it led to regrets in his past life. In this life, he would never repeat the same mistakes. But when he truly heard Skyby's ruthless words, Theo Chin inexplicably felt uncomfortable. Though he quickly suppressed it, this was exactly what he had wanted. He looked at Skyby and spoke again. If we have disturbed you, we apologize. You know my mother. She has recently misunderstood Lin due to some rumors and has been treating her rather poorly. Skyby remained silent, quietly waiting for him to continue. I know this might not be your intention. Theo Chin took a deep breath. But could you please find an opportunity to clearly tell my mother? Ask her to stop constantly pairing you and me together. This has caused Lin a great deal of distress and pressure. Skyby looked at his furrowed brow, at the way he was so worried about another woman, and suddenly found it somewhat laughable. Not only did he stand up for Lin, but he also threw mud at her for Lin's sake. The implication in his words was clearly that she had said something to Chin's mother, causing Chin's mother to treat Lin unfavorably. In his heart, even Chin's mother liking her was her fault. Her very existence, Skyby, is the original sin that brings trouble to Lin. She didn't want to continue entangling with him and wanted to make a clean break, so she nodded lightly. All right. I understand. Theo Chin seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, yet also appeared to feel somewhat guilty, adding, thank you. Also, what happened in the past is all over. We should both move on with our lives. Yes, it's all in the past. Skyby repeated his words. Battalion Commander Chin, Dr. Lin, is there anything else? If not, I have other matters to attend to. Theo Chin looked at her distant attitude. His lips moved slightly, but in the end, he said nothing. Leaning on his crutch, he turned and left with Lin. Watching his slightly faltering back, it overlapped with the tall and straight figure from his previous life. Skyby smiled. Theo Chin, once you make a move, there's no turning back. You need to look forward and never regret. 12. Skyby is a person who always keeps her word. Since she had agreed, she picked a time and made a special trip to the Chin family. Chin's mother was overjoyed to see her. Sky, come on in and have a seat. I just happened to make some snow fungus soup. Would you like a bowl, Auntie Chin? Please don't trouble yourself. Skyby stopped her, speaking earnestly. I came today because there's something I need to clarify with you. Seeing her serious expression, Chin's mother seemed to sense something, and the smile on her face faded slightly. What is it, Sky? You look so serious. Sky looked directly into Mrs. Chen's eyes, her tone clear and firm. Auntie, I know you've always liked me and treated me like your own daughter. I've always respected you deeply as well. However, regarding the relationship between me and Theo Chen, I think there might be some misunderstanding. Mrs. Chen pursed her lips tightly and remained silent. Theo Chen and I grew up together since childhood, and I truly cherish this revolutionary friendship, but my feelings for him have always been purely sisterly, nothing more. Sky spoke each word with exceptional clarity. There was none before, there is none now, and there will be even less in the future. Mrs. Chen couldn't help but interject, but Sky, you clearly used to. Sky smiled and interrupted. That was when I didn't know any better. Now that Theo Chen has found someone he truly likes, I'm genuinely happy for him. Dr. Lin is a good girl, and they are a perfect match. She leaned forward, taking Mrs. Chen's hand. Auntie, please don't try to pair me with Theo Chen anymore. It's unfair to Dr. Lin, and for me, it's also a source of distress. Mrs. Chen was stunned, her face flickering with surprise and disappointment before finally settling into a long sigh. Sky, are you speaking from the heart? Sky nodded. Absolutely true, Auntie Chen, you will always be my elder, and I am very grateful for your kindness to me, but matters of the heart cannot be forced. I want Theo Chen to be happy, and his happiness clearly lies with Dr. Lin. Aunt Chen remained silent for a long time before slowly saying, I understand, it was me who was mistaken, but you must not become distant with them because of me. After leaving the Chen family, Sky felt completely at ease. The sky was clear blue, and the sunlight was bright. She finally severed this last unnecessary connection with her own hands. 13. After that candid conversation with Sky, although Mrs. Chen felt disappointed, she no longer deliberately tied Sky and Theo Chen together as she used to. However, the interactions between the two families gradually faded, occasionally meeting in the courtyard. Mrs. Chen would still greet with a smile, Sky, heading to work. It's just that the excessive enthusiasm was gone, replaced by a touch of just right politeness. Sky actually found this way of interacting more comfortable. Yes, Auntie Chen, there's a difficult case consultation today. She always responded politely before hurrying off to the hospital. Sometimes in the hospital garden, she would catch distant glimpses of Theo Chen and Lin strolling side by side. Lin carefully supported Theo Chen's arm as they walked, the two of them whispering with heads bowed, their faces glowing with happiness. Theo, the doctor said if you keep up with rehabilitation training for 2 more months, you'll be able to walk without crutches. Well, it's all thanks to you being here. Overhearing such conversations, Sky would always calmly take a detour. Her heart no longer rippled at these words. Now her world was completely filled with silver needles, medical texts, and patients. During the day, she sees patients and treats illnesses, while at night, she organizes the family's ancestral medical records. Combining her past life's experience with the practices of this life, she begins writing insights on the clinical application of gold needle therapy, Dr. regarding the acupuncture treatment plan for this case. The young intern respectfully inquired, holding the medical record, pay special attention to the depth and angle of needle insertion here. Sky patiently explained, the gold needle in her hand gleaming softly under the light. Life was busy and fulfilling, and the disturbances related to Theo Chen had finally become a distant past. Time flows like water, quietly passing by. Half a year has passed in the blink of an eye. 14. At the beginning of spring this year, the military district is going to hold a joint competition. In the cafeteria, the soldiers are all discussing this event. I heard this competition is related to the promotion quota. Battalion Commander Chen is definitely going to participate. Right, he's the best in our military region. The young soldier gave a thumbs up. Our company commander GU is no slouch either. Sky walked past with his lunchbox, paying no attention to these discussions. In his previous life, Theo Chen made a name for himself in this competition, winning first place with an absolute advantage, receiving a special promotion, and from then on, his career soared smoothly. But in this life, all of this has nothing to do with her anymore. She heard that Theo Chen's injury was recovering well. The cast had been removed, and he was intensifying his training. Lin was a good companion, accompanying Theo Chin for lap after lap of slow jogging on the track every day. Sky Bai thought Theo Chin would eventually achieve great success, and she too would shine brilliantly. However, the trajectory of fate had quietly changed the moment she was reborn, but at this moment, no one had noticed yet. 15. On the day of the grand competition, Sky Bai, as a member of the medical support team, stayed at the medical station along with other medical staff. She skillfully counted the emergency medications, seemingly oblivious to the lively atmosphere on the field. When it was Theo Chin's team's turn to take the stage, Sky Bai still instinctively glanced over. That man, even after experiencing severe injuries, stood at the starting line, with his back straight, his gaze sharp, exuding the formidable aura unique to a soldier. The events proceeded one by one, and Theo Chin's performance was initially still brilliant. Both his physical fitness and skills demonstrated his solid foundation. In the audience, El Lin nervously clutched her handkerchief. Her eyes filled with pride. However, when it came to the obstacle course requiring high-intensity weight-bearing and intense maneuvering, an accident occurred. After landing from a jump over a high board, Theo Chin's expression suddenly changed, and his movements became noticeably sluggish and distorted. He tried to force himself to continue, but the next low crawl net obstacle required significant core and leg strength. As soon as he bent down, a suppressed groan of pain escaped him, and his entire body involuntarily curled up. Cold sweat instantly covered his forehead. Sky Bai immediately grabbed the first aid kit and rushed over. Old injury flared up, needs immediate medical attention. She calmly assessed, assisting other medical staff in lifting him onto the stretcher. The audience erupted in an uproar. The once invincible Soldier King had actually met his downfall in the grand competition. Sky Bai stood at the medical station, watching the stretcher being carried away. Her gaze calm, she recalled her previous life. When Theo Chin was injured, it was she who used the Bai family's secret methods to carefully nurse him back to health, enabling him to recover in a short time, even better than before. But in this life, the ointment she provided was rejected, and the follow-up examinations and suggestions were ignored. Perhaps, this is fate. Everyone must take responsibility for their own choices. 16. The news of Theo Chin's defeat in the competition and the recurrence of his old injury quickly spread throughout the military district. After more detailed examinations at the hospital, the conclusion was not optimistic. His previous injuries were not completely cured, and the extreme strain from this competition caused irreversible damage. The doctor's diagnosis was that he is no longer suitable to remain in high-intensity, high-risk combat units. This news was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue for the Chin family. Theo Chin's father is the chief of staff of the military region, having devoted his life to military service, and had high hopes for his son. Mrs. Chin was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. That evening, as soon as Sky Bai returned home, her parents called her into the living room. Sitting on the sofa were Mr. and Mrs. Chin, both looking deeply worried. Mrs. Bai began to speak. Sky, your Uncle Chin and Auntie Chin are here to ask Mom for a favor, and your medical skills are now far superior to mine. Before her mother could finish speaking, Sky Bai understood and calmly took a seat. Mrs. Chin immediately grabbed Sky Bai's hand, tears welling up in her eyes before she even spoke. Sky, Auntie knows that Theo Chin was wrong about some things in the past, but this time, you must help Theo Chin. He can't leave the military. It's his life. Mr. Chin also looked grave. We've heard that perhaps your family's ancestral medical techniques might still have a way. Could you take another look at Theo Chin? Even if there's a glimmer of hope, we don't want to give up. All eyes were fixed on Sky Bai. Mrs. Bai also looked at Sky Bai. Sky, what do you think? Ever since Theo Chin and El Lin got together, Mrs. Bai had been holding a grudge in her heart. When his own daughter followed behind Theo Chin, he did not refuse, but in the end, he brought back El Lin and drew a clear line with his daughter, causing her such embarrassment. She felt very uncomfortable that her own daughter was looked down upon. But business is business, and personal matters are personal. Theo Chin was someone she had watched grow up, and she didn't want his military career to end here. My daughter's medical skills have improved by leaps and bounds this year, already surpassing my own. So even though she knew her daughter was wronged, she still had to speak up and wanted her to go take a look and help with the treatment. Skyby raised her eyes, looking at Chin's parents who were full of anticipation, and said in a calm voice, "Mom, let's go take a look at Battalion Commander Chin." The address, Battalion Commander Chin, made everyone in the room freeze for a moment. I knew they had grown distant, but I never imagined it would be to this extent. Mrs. Bai snapped back to reality and nodded. "Then we'll go to the hospital tomorrow and have Theo Chin thoroughly examined." Mr. and Mrs. Chin expressed endless gratitude, as if they had grasped their last lifeline. However, none of them noticed that from beginning to end, Skyby had only said take a look, and not cure. With 2 lifetimes of experience, Skyby seemed to have foreseen today's outcome when Theo Chin rejected her. He really isn't suitable to remain in the military any longer. Recalling how Theo Chin ultimately became the head of the military region in her previous life, yet in this lifetime, he stopped right here, and Skyby still felt some regret, but she had also tried to change. 17. Early the next morning, Mrs. Bai brought Skyby to Theo Chin's hospital room. Theo Chin lay in the hospital bed, his face ashen, the sharpness in his eyes replaced by emptiness. El Lin held his hand tightly, her eyes filled with worry. "Theo, don't worry. My family's ancestral medical skills will surely find a solution," El Lin whispered comfortingly. Theo Chin simply kept his eyes closed, his tightly pressed lips revealing the despair in his heart. Mrs. Bai carefully examined his injuries, sometimes pressing and asking questions, other times concentrating intently while taking his pulse. Skyby quietly assisted nearby, documenting the examination findings. "Does it hurt here?" "Yes." "Do you feel any numbness in your leg?" "There is." After finishing the examination, Mother Bai washed her hands, her brow furrowed tightly. Skyby helped carefully check once more. While Skyby was checking, Theo Chin finally opened his eyes. He looked at her with a hopeful expression. After Skyby finished checking thoroughly, she looked at her mother and shook her head. Theo Chin saw this action and slammed the bed hard. Chin's mother knew the answer in her heart, but she couldn't help asking, "Mother-in-law, oh no, Sky's mom, how is it? Theo Chin, can he still recover?" Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Theo Chin's injury, Mrs. Bai slowly began. "It's been delayed for too long. If it had been half a year ago, right after the injury, and our family's ancestral acupuncture techniques had been used promptly to unblock the meridians, combined with the specially formulated ointment for external application and internal use to strengthen the foundation and cultivate vitality, perhaps it could have been completely cured without leaving any aftereffects." She paused briefly and, under the Chin family's suddenly changed gazes, continued, "But now, the meridians in his injured area have become congested and adhered, and the hidden injury has already set in. At this point, I can only do my best to try, using acupuncture and medication to alleviate his pain and improve some functions. But if the goal is to restore him to a level where he can withstand the high-intensity training of a combat unit, I'm afraid it's impossible." The words impossible struck everyone's hearts like a heavy hammer. Chin's mother's face instantly turned deathly pale, her body swayed, and she almost couldn't stand steady. Chin's father also seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. El Lin's tears instantly welled up. "How could Theo he, suddenly?" Chin's mother sharply raised her head and stared fixedly at Skyby. "Sky, you were there. You were right at the disaster relief scene. You clearly could have saved him. You clearly had the ability. So why didn't you treat him?" Her voice suddenly rose sharply, filled with anger and accusation. Is it because he refused to marry you and chose to marry El Lin instead, that you deliberately didn't save him? You just stood by and watched his future get destroyed. I truly treated you like my own daughter. How could you not save him? How could you possibly not save him?" These words exploded like a thunderclap out of nowhere, reverberating through the hospital room. Mr. Chin looked at Mrs. Chin in shock, then turned his gaze to Skyby. El Lin also stopped crying. Her eyes filled with complex emotions as she looked at Skyby. Even Theo Chin, lying in the hospital bed, suddenly opened his eyes and stared at Skyby. His gaze filled with disbelief and a deep pain. All eyes, like spotlights, instantly focused on Skyby. In that gaze, there was a desperate questioning, a hidden suspicion, and a painful struggle. Skyby stood there, enduring all the stares. She remembered Theo Chin's resolute refusal beneath the ruins, and the ointment he pushed away in the tent. I remembered his cold and ruthless way of drawing the line outside the hospital room. I remembered his selfless act of blocking the stone for Lin. I remembered his sense of entitlement when he asked her to clarify things, the kindness of a past life, the grievances of this life, 60 years of mutual respect, 1 year of being like strangers. She slowly lifted her gaze, calmly sweeping over the excited, distorted face of Chin's mother, over the pained look in Chin's father's eyes, over Lin's complicated expression, and finally, it settled on the face of the man lying on the hospital bed, the one who had been entangled with her for 2 lifetimes. She smiled faintly. I've already tried to save him. 18. Skybai's calm statement, I've already tried to save him, was like pouring cold water over the heated atmosphere of accusation in the hospital room, instantly freezing it. Mrs. Chin opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something more, but was cut off by Skybai's next words. But Battalion Commander Chin repeatedly refused. I also approached Dr. Lin and asked her to persuade Battalion Commander Chin to try my ointment. However, it seems they did not use it. If only Battalion Commander Chin had trusted me just once, perhaps he wouldn't be in this state now. Skybai's gaze swept indifferently over the pale-faced Theo Chin lying on the hospital bed. For the specific details, you should ask Battalion Commander Chin yourselves. He knows best. After saying this, she didn't look at anyone else and took her mother's arm. Mom, let's go. Mother Bai sighed and patted her daughter's hand, ignoring the varied gazes behind them. The mother and daughter left the ward directly. The door closed, and a deathly silence spread. Mrs. Chin suddenly turned to her son, her voice trembling. Theo, what she said is true. It was you who refused to let her save you. Theo Chin closed his eyes, his Adam's apple bobbing violently, but he didn't say a word. Chin's mother then turned to Lin. Sky said she gave you the ointment. Did you actually use it on my son? Lin avoided eye contact and remained silent. It's all because of you. You jinx. If it weren't for you, how could my son have ended up in this state? Just as Chin's mother lunged at Lin, Theo Chin suddenly opened his eyes. Enough. Yes. I was the one who refused Skybai's ointment. I was the one who refused her pulse diagnosis. And I was the one who didn't let Lin use Skybai's ointment on me. It was all me. His voice was hoarse but clear. It was me, arrogantly thinking my body could handle it, not wanting to owe her any favors, so she wouldn't have any unnecessary misunderstandings. All responsibility lies with me alone. It has nothing to do with Lin, and nothing to do with anyone else. He truly lived up to being a man of integrity. Even in such a situation, he didn't shirk responsibility and even protected Lin. Chin's mother collapsed into the chair, covering her face as she wept bitterly. She finally understood. It wasn't that Skybai refused to save him, but that her own son had single-handedly ruined his future. She wanted to vent, to scold her son for his foolishness. But seeing his utterly desolate expression as he struggled to hold himself together, all her words caught in her throat, turning into silent tears. Theo Chin lay there, his eyes vacant as he stared at the ceiling. How he wished he could vent his anger. He resented fate for toying with him, despised his own foolishness, and loathed that damned, uncontrollable emotion. But who could he hate? Hate Skybai. What had she done wrong? Hate Lin. She was even more innocent. All the bitter consequences were sown by his own hands. And now he had no choice but to swallow his pain in silence. After leaving the hospital room, Mrs. Bai walked in silence for a while before finally unable to hold back, letting out a heavy sigh. Sky, from now on, let's have less contact with the Chin family. She felt it was unfair to her daughter. It was clearly a gesture of goodwill, yet it was met with such suspicion and accusations. Her daughter deserves better treatment. Skybai nodded, feeling little emotion inside. I know, Mom. 19. Theo Chin's military career had finally come to an end. The organization considered arranging a civilian position for him, but he refused. Let me sit in the office all day, watching others train. Theo Chin smiled bitterly. I can't do that. Lin held his hand. Theo, whatever decision you make, I'll support you. A real man can make something of himself anywhere he goes. He said this to his worried parents, his eyes carrying the despondency from his injury, yet also a spark of unwillingness to admit defeat. Not long after, Theo Chin and Lin got married. The wedding was exceptionally lively. with almost everyone from the entire compound invited, red double happiness characters, deafening drums, and gongs. A house full of guests, and endless blessings filled the air. Theo Chin wore his wedding attire, his posture still upright, but upon closer look, the sharpness in his brow had faded, replaced by a touch of melancholy. Lin, dressed in a red wedding gown, smiled radiantly as she nestled close to him. Sky Bai also received an invitation, and she attended. Sitting among the guests, watching the newlyweds on the stage, she recalled her previous life. When she and Theo Chin had simply gone to register their marriage without even holding a wedding banquet. At the time, I thought it was a revolutionary camaraderie, so everything was kept simple. Looking back now, perhaps it was only because the person I married wasn't the one I truly loved, so I couldn't be bothered to put in the effort. In contrast, in this lifetime, he has been quite attentive to Lin. The wedding was very lively. Sky Bai quietly finished the banquet, offered a polite wedding gift, and then quietly left. All the past events are now completely turned over. 20. Theo Chin's wedding was a lively topic in the compound for a while, but it gradually faded away. Amid the rumors and gossip, Sky Bai was constantly pressured by her parents to get married. Mrs. Bai said during dinner, looking at her daughter's thin face, hesitating to speak. Aunt Zhong asked about you again yesterday. Sky Bai lowered her head and continued eating. Mom, I've been busy with my research project lately and don't have the energy to think about anything else. But you're already 25, Mr. Bai put down his chopsticks, his brow furrowed tightly. The gossip in the compound is getting uglier, with all sorts of rumors flying around. Your father just feels bad for you. Sky Bai has also heard people say that she still can't let go of Theo Chin, which is why she has remained single all these years. Could she run out and explain that she just wants to focus on her career? Looking at her parents' increasingly graying temples, Sky Bai swallowed her words of refusal. This era is not like later times. A woman who doesn't marry is destined to face too much criticism. That evening, Father Bai returned from the military with a long-lost smile on his face. Sky, come quickly, I have some good news for you. He mysteriously pulled out a photograph. This is Ji Yu Hung, the champion of this year's major competition. He's a fine young man. Would you like to meet him? Ji Yu Hung. Sky Bai was stunned. She remembered this name. In her previous life, Theo Chin had mentioned him, saying he was a rare talent. Unfortunately, during the martial arts competition, his old injury flared up, and he ended up in second place. In this life, he actually won first place. Just because of this slight deviation in fate that sparked curiosity, Sky Bai agreed to meet. The meeting was arranged in a park. In the park on the weekend, willow branches swayed gently. From a distance, Sky Bai saw a tall, straight figure standing by the pavilion. His hands were constantly adjusting his collar. Upon seeing the newcomer, Ji Yu Hung quickly stepped forward to greet him. Dr. Bai, I am Ji Yu Hung. Up close, he appeared even more handsome than in the photographs. The uniform was impeccably pressed, the epaulets brand new, and there was an innate sense of righteousness in his expression. The two strolled along the lakeside, and Ji Yu Hung gradually opened up. Dr. Bai, we've actually met before. Oh, at the earthquake relief site. His gaze was warm. My leg was crushed and got infected, causing a high fever. It was you who used the golden needle to bring my fever down. Only then did Sky Bai suddenly remember that there was indeed such a wounded person. At that time, he was covered in blood but still insisted on letting the other wounded be treated first. And what a coincidence. Ji Yu Hung took out a small clay pot from his pocket. Do you still remember this? Sky Bai froze. This was exactly the same ointment jar that Theo Chin had rejected back then. That day, you came out of the tent, handed this to me, and then left. Ji Yu Hung gently rubbed the clay jar, his tone filled with gratitude. This medicine is amazing. My injury healed incredibly fast. If it weren't for this, I wouldn't have made it to the grand competition, let alone taken first place. Sky Bai was deeply moved. It turned out that a simple, casual act of hers had changed this young man's fate. Dr. Bai, Ji Yu Hung suddenly stopped walking, his ears slightly red, but his gaze was unusually resolute. There's something I've been holding in for a long time. You've always been the dream girl in the hearts of many of our cadres. Sky Bai looked up in surprise. Before, everyone thought you would end up with Battalion Commander Chin, so no one dared to think otherwise. He took a deep breath. But now that I've taken first place and been promoted to battalion commander, I finally have some confidence. That's why I dared to ask my old superior to help arrange a match. The spring breeze brushed across the lake, stirring layers of ripples. Skyby looked at this sincere man, recalling the ointment that had ended up with her by chance, and the completely different path her life had taken in this lifetime. Battalion Commander Gu, she said softly, we can start as friends first. Gu Heng's eyes instantly lit up. Great, that's wonderful. Sunlight filtered through the willow branches, dancing on his shoulders. Skyby suddenly felt that her mood had brightened along with the man's smile. 21. Since that day in the park, Gu Heng had become a frequent visitor to the hospital. Dr. By, Battalion Commander Gu has sent you something again. The young nurse smiled as she handed over a paper package. Today, it's a bag of Osmanthus candy. Skyby reluctantly accepted it. This was already the 5th time this month. Sometimes it was seasonal fruits, other times a new silk scarf from the Supply and Marketing Cooperative, and yesterday, he even sent over an exquisite fountain pen. Battalion Commander Gu spent all his salary on you, didn't he? A colleague teased. Skyby just smiled, but warmth blossomed in her heart. Unconsciously, she had grown accustomed to Gu Heng's presence, to his simple yet sincere care. That day, a young soldier rushed to the hospital in a hurry. Dr. Bai, our battalion commander has a high fever and can't get up in the dormitory. Skyby immediately picked up the medical kit. How long has he been feverish? It's been 2 days. And he just refuses to come to the hospital. Skyby hurried to Gu Heng's dormitory with the young soldier. He was barely holding himself up, sitting at the table reading a book, his face clearly flushed with an unnatural redness. The young soldier said with a grin, Battalion Commander, I've brought your wife here. Let's see if she can handle you. Skyby instantly blushed bright red with embarrassment. Gu Heng casually threw a pillow at him. You little rascal. Go run 10 laps around the field. I'm not going. The young soldier nimbly dodged and continued to complain. Sister-in-law, the battalion commander has had a fever for 2 days now and just refuses to take his medicine. You really need to keep him in check. After saying this, he wisely slipped away. Gu Heng scratched his head awkwardly. Sorry about that. This kid just loves to mess around. I'm fine. Sorry to have made you come all this way. Skyby looked at his flushed cheeks and reached out to touch his forehead, feeling a burning heat. Still saying you're fine. Your temperature is almost 39 degrees. Gu Heng felt the girl's cool, soft fingertips touch his forehead, and his entire body stiffened. That coolness seemed to carry an electric current, rushing from his forehead straight to his heart. This tough guy, who never flinched through all the grueling training on the field, unexpectedly reddened at the tips of his ears for the first time. He instinctively shrank back, his voice stammering, really, it's nothing. Skyby was amused by his rare display of awkwardness but still put on a stern face. Battalion Commander Gu, putting on a brave front in front of a doctor is not a good habit. Skyby pressed him back onto the bed without another word, taking a thermometer from the medical kit. Don't move, let's take your temperature first. Gu Heng obediently opened his mouth to hold the thermometer, but his eyes never left Skyby's busy figure. His gaze was so tender it seemed to melt with affection. Skyby took out the thermometer, her brow furrowed deeply. 38.9 degrees. With such a high fever, how can you still sit here reading? Gu Heng smiled sheepishly. I just feel a bit heavy-headed and thought reading for a while would help distract me. Skyby held the silver needles. Take off your clothes. I'll give you a few acupuncture treatments, and then you need to get some proper rest. Looking at her serious little face, Gu Heng suddenly felt that this illness was worth it. He awkwardly took off his shirt, revealing his well-built torso. Suddenly remembering something, he immediately put his clothes back on. By the way, have you eaten? I'll go to the cafeteria to get you some food. Skyby didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Battalion Commander Gu, you're the one who's sick. Why are you worrying about me? Gu Heng's ears turned red again. I was afraid you'd be hungry. At this moment, Gu Heng had none of the authoritative demeanor he displayed on the training ground. He was clearly just a young man experiencing his first crush. Skyby's heart softened, and her voice unconsciously gentled. Just focus on taking care of yourself first. Once your fever breaks, we can go eat together. Gu Heng's eyes instantly lit up. Really? Skyby nodded. You can come to the hospital to find me after your fever goes down. In the single dormitory, it was scorchingly hot. When Skyby was about to leave with the medicine box, her gaze was drawn to a single photo pressed under the glass on the desk. The photo shows a young soldier wearing an old-style military uniform. What is this? Skyby picked up the photo frame and suddenly froze. This face was all too familiar to her. In the old photos treasured by her father, this young soldier, with his arm around her father's shoulder, had appeared. Ji Yu-hung also looked at the photo. It's my father. He sacrificed his life when I was 10 years old. Skyby's heart pounded. What is your father's name? Ji Yu-kwan. Ji Yu-hung was a bit puzzled. What's wrong? Skyby pressed urgently. Does he have another name? Called Ji Yu-gosheng. Ji Yu-hung suddenly sat up straight, unable to hide his surprise. How did you know? That was my father's original name, after he sacrificed himself. Our family said a hero shouldn't bear that name, so they changed it to Ji Yu-kwan. This photo, Skyby's voice trembled with emotion. Could I borrow it for a moment? After receiving permission, she took the photo and hurried home, rushing straight into her father's study. She pulled out that treasured photo album and carefully compared each page. One by one, it's really the same person, she murmured to herself, her fingers gently tracing the faces of her father and that young man in the photo. Sky, what are you looking for? Father Bai walked into the study. Dad, look at this. Skyby placed two photos side by side on the desk. Uncle Gu's son. I found him. White father put on his reading glasses, his hands suddenly trembling. That's right, it's Go Sheng. It really is Go Sheng. White father's eyes instantly reddened. His voice choked with emotion. I've been searching for his family all these years. Back on the battlefield, if Go Sheng hadn't taken that bullet for me, it would have been me who died. Quick, where is your Uncle Gu's son? Take me to see him. Skyby quickly grabbed her excited father. Dad, he's not a stranger. It's Ji Yu-hung, 22, with the special relationship of being the son of their lifesaver. Skyby and Ji Yu-hung's marriage was quickly put on the agenda. Sky. Seeing you and Ji Yu-hung together, the big stone in my heart has finally been lifted. Father Bai patted his daughter's hand, his eyes full of relief. Your Uncle Ji Yu can rest in peace now. Skyby smiled and nodded. I'm happy too that Dad found me such a good husband. Ji Yu-hung devoted all his attention to Skyby. Ever since his mother passed away from illness, he had been alone. But now he finally felt the warmth of a family again. Sky, this is the money I've saved over the past few years. Ji Yu-hung handed his pay envelope to Skyby, his ears slightly red. From now on, I'll leave it all to you to keep. Skyby couldn't refuse, so she had to accept it. But what will you do if you need money? I live and eat in the military, so I don't need much money, Ji Yu-hung said with a simple, honest smile. If I need money, I'll ask you for it. Somehow, news of their growing closeness reached Theo Chin's ears. That day, Skyby had just finished a surgery and was walking out of the hospital with tired steps when she saw Theo Chin waiting at the entrance. He was dressed in casual clothes, looking less authoritative and more carefree compared to when he wore his military uniform. Skyby, he got straight to the point, his brows furrowed. I heard you're going to marry Ji Yu-hung. Skyby looked at him calmly. Yes, come and have a drink at our wedding when the time comes. Theo Chin spoke with urgency. You two aren't a good match. Ji Yu-hung, he's too reckless, and the missions he carries out are too dangerous. If you're really looking for a partner, I know a few good comrades. He listed several names. If you're serious about finding a partner, these are all good options. Their family backgrounds, character, and positions are all reliable. Skyby recognized those names immediately. In her previous life, they were all subordinates promoted by Theo Chin himself, loyal to him through and through. She felt a bit like laughing. Did he still think he was the husband who could dictate her life? Thank you for your kindness, but it's not necessary. Skyby directly refused. Who I get along with is my own business. Seeing her firm attitude, Theo Chin frowned even more deeply. After a moment of silence, as if he had made up his mind, he lowered his voice and said, I had a dream. I dreamed that Ji Yu-hung sacrificed his life during a mission. I'm advising you because I don't want you to suffer the pain of losing a loved one in the future. Skyby's heart suddenly skipped a beat. In a daze, she remembered that in her previous life, Theo Chin did have a close comrade with the surname Ji Yu who died in a border mission, after attending the memorial service. Theo Chin was in low spirits for a long time, and had once lamented in front of her about the unpredictability of life, saying how brave that comrade was. What a pity, could it be? That person is Ji Yu Heng. She had her doubts, but looking at the complex and inscrutable expression in Theo Chin's eyes at that moment, she couldn't determine whether his words were driven by some ulterior motive or if they truly carried a prophetic warning. But no matter what, her life was not something for him to arrange. Thank you for letting me know, but who can really predict what the future holds? Sky Bai's tone was distant. I trust the organization, and I believe in Ji Yu Heng's abilities. There's no need for you to worry. I'm saying this for your own good. I'm really not lying. If you don't listen to me, you'll be the one suffering later. Theo Chin wanted to persuade her further. Sky Bai interrupted him. There's no need, Theo Chin. We each have our own paths to follow. Seeing her distant and cold attitude, Theo Chin's lips moved slightly, but in the end, he only left these words, if you ever need any help in the future, you can come to me. Sky Bai shook her head. Her tone resolute. Forget it, Theo Chin. From now on, it's better if we keep our distance. In the end, she didn't tell Theo Chin that she had also been reborn. Ji Yu Heng's fate had already changed because of her, and she would use every means possible to keep him alive. 23. After marriage, the bond between Sky Bai and Ji Yu Heng grew even deeper. Ji Yu Heng never interfered with Sky Bai and even did everything possible to support her career. Sky, isn't your hospital currently preparing a traditional Chinese medicine research team? I think you're fully capable of striving for the team leader position. Sky Bai looked up and smiled. You also support me in continuing to study medicine. Of course I support you, Ji Yu Heng said seriously. Your golden needle medical skills are a precious treasure and should not be buried. Don't worry about family matters. I'm here to handle them. The two exchanged a smile, warmth flowing between them. Time passed like flowing water. In the second year of their marriage, a political storm swept through the peaceful compound. That day, Ji Yu Heng came home from work and said to Sky Bai with a grave expression, Sky, Chief of Staff Chin is in trouble. I heard he's being sent down to a cowshed in the northwest for re-education. Sky Bai nearly dropped the teacup in her hand. What? She clearly remembered that in her previous life, although Chin's father had also been impacted, he was ultimately only demoted, but in this life, the punishment is so severe that he's being sent to a cowshed. She put down the document in her hand. Let's go to Mom and Dad's place. Sky Bai and Ji Yu Heng returned to Mr. Bai's place, and sure enough, they heard the elderly couple discussing the matter. Mr. Bai frowned deeply. Old Chin is in real trouble this time. I went to see the old chief today to put in a good word for him, but the chief explicitly told me not to get involved. Mrs. Bai sighed. Old Chin was foolish. How could he have chosen the wrong side? Bai's father pondered and said, if someone can vouch for him at a critical moment and recount his contributions during the war years, it's not impossible for him to receive leniency. At this point, Bai's father stood up. I'm going to make another call. What else are you going to do? Bai's mother grabbed his arm, her tone agitated. Theo Chin strung our daughter along for so many years, and then just changed his affections without a second thought, and that time at the hospital, old Chin's wife actually blamed us, saying Sky deliberately refused to save him. But the truth is, it was their own son who wouldn't let Sky help. As for their family, I'd rather not get involved too much, if it doesn't work out. I don't want to end up being blamed. Bai's father paused in his movement, and after a long while, he let out a heavy sigh. Forget it. Hearing this, Sky Bai suddenly understood. In her previous life, because of her, her father must have disregarded his own safety and went all out to help Mr. Chin, which led to him being demoted 2 levels. In this life, they are no longer in-laws with the Chin family, and because of the actions of Theo Chin and Mrs. Chin, her mother has developed a dislike for them. As a result, her father will not be as devoted to the Chin family as he was in the previous life. So, the outcome is being directly sent to the cowshed. This is the inevitable outcome after Theo Chin's rebirth and his choice of El Lin. Realizing this, Sky Bai felt a mix of complex emotions in her heart. 24. Sky Bai remembered that around this time in her previous life, Chin's mother, due to the shock of Chin's father's accident, had suffered a stroke and became partially paralyzed. As the daughter-in-law, she had no choice but to resign from the hospital, take care of her mother-in-law full-time at home, and completely give up her own career in this life. Although she didn't want to have any involvement with Theo Chin again, when she thought of Mrs. Chin, who had once treated her like her own daughter, and remembered how Theo Chin had genuinely been good to her in his youth, Skyby ultimately couldn't harden her heart. After dinner, she deliberately called her mother aside. "Mom, I saw Aunt Chin the other day, and she looked very unwell. Now that Uncle Chin has had an accident, I'm afraid she won't be able to handle it." She glanced at Jiu Hang, who was clearing the dishes, and lowered her voice. "I don't really want to see the Chin family right now, but to repay Aunt Chin for her past kindness to me, could you go visit her on my behalf?" Mother Bai sighed. "You're just too soft-hearted, child. Fine. I'll go first thing tomorrow morning." Early the next morning, Mother Bai arrived at the Chin family's home carrying her medicine kit. She knocked for a long time with no answer. Sensing something was wrong, she pushed the door open with force. The sight before her made her gasp sharply. Mother Chin lay unconscious on the floor, a shattered teapot scattered beside her, and the kettle on the coal stove had long since boiled dry. Mother Bai hurried forward to check and found that she had been suffering from a stroke for a long time, and her limbs had already become stiff. "Auntie Chin," Mother Bai said, her eyes welling up as she administered aid, "how is it that there's no one at home?" Despite Mother Bai using all the knowledge she had acquired throughout her life, Mrs. Chin's condition was simply too severe. By the time Theo Chin and El Lin rushed to the hospital upon hearing the news, it was already too late. "Aunt Bai. My mother." Theo Chin knelt by the bed, his voice choked with emotion. Mother Bai shook her head gravely. "It was discovered too late. Even if Hua Tuor were reborn, it would be. I'm afraid she will never be able to stand again." Mother Bai sounded somewhat angry. "Your father is under investigation and can't return. With such a serious matter happening at home and your mother alone, why didn't you and El Lin come back to check on her?" Theo Chin closed his eyes in agony. Although he had been reborn, the blow of not being able to join the military had made him forget such an important matter. When the news reached Skyby, she was in the middle of her hospital shift. The pen in her hand paused briefly, but she ultimately continued writing the prescription. Even though she had been reborn, there were some things she still couldn't change. 25. No one stepped forward to plead for Mr. Chin's case, and in the end, the disciplinary document was issued. The day the transfer notice was delivered, Skyby happened to be back at the military compound to pick up some things. From a distance, she saw Chin's father standing alone at the doorstep, clutching the life-altering notice in his hand, his back hunched as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. Skyby hesitated for a moment, then walked over. "Uncle Chin," she called softly. Father Chin turned around and, seeing it was Skyby, forced a faint smile. "It's Sky," he said. Skyby took an envelope from her pocket and quietly slipped it into Father Chin's hand. "There's some money here. Take it with you. Conditions are tough in the northwest. It'll come in handy." Chin's father held the thick envelope, his eyes instantly reddening. "No, Uncle has some. Please keep it," Skyby said softly. "A poor family but a rich journey. Take it for the road. Life there won't be easy, but you must take good care of yourself. Remember, the sky will eventually brighten." Chin's father trembled as he accepted the envelope, tears streaming down his aged face. "Sky, your uncle regrets it. It's Theo Chin who is not worthy, who let you down. If only back then Skyby quickly interrupted. "It's all in the past. Please take care of yourself." Just then, Theo Chin came out of the house with his luggage and paused when he saw Skyby. "Dad, it's time to go," he said in a hoarse voice. Mr. Chin looked behind his son and, seeing no one there, his face darkened. "Where is El Lin?" Theo Chin lowered his head. She said there's an important surgery at the hospital today and she can't get away." Mr. Chin sneered coldly. "An important surgery? She doesn't even have time to see her father-in-law off." He pointed at Theo Chin, his voice trembling. "This is the person you insisted on marrying no matter what. Back then, for her, you pushed away such a wonderful girl like Sky. Now look at this. Just look." Theo Chin stood in place, silent. The sunlight shone on him, casting a lonely shadow on the ground. Skyby shook her head and turned to leave. Even after walking far away, she could still hear old man Chin's suppressed coughs and sighs. 26. According to regulations, the Chin family's housing was reclaimed. due to severe illness, Mrs. Chin was unable to accompany Mr. Chin to the cowshed, so Theo Chin had to bring his mother to the home he shared with El Lin. The day of the move was unusually quiet. Theo Chin carried everything back and forth alone, his sweat soaking through his old military uniform. The neighbors' gazes, filled with either sympathy or contempt, pricked his back like needles. Look, even the Chin family has come to this. Keep your voice down, it's really pitiful. When the last piece of luggage was moved into the dorm room of less than 15 square meters, Theo Chin leaned against the doorframe, panting heavily from exhaustion, looking at the crammed room. He truly understood for the first time what it means for a family to fall from grace. Theo, Mrs. Chin lay on the bed and asked weakly, "I've been a burden to you." Theo Chin forced himself to sound energetic. "Mom, I'm your son. Between mother and son, there's no such thing as being a burden. Don't worry about how small the room is now. Once I get promoted, I'll apply to the organization for a bigger house." But the pressures of reality came one after another. It was only then that Theo Chin realized that the resettlement allowance he received upon leaving the military was all in El Lin's hands. Ever since Mr. Chin's accident, El Lin moved directly back to the hospital dormitory without even giving an explanation. The weight of life instantly fell entirely on Theo Chin's shoulders. He had to go home every day on a fixed schedule to give his mother medicine, bathe her, and cook for her. Although the military leadership sympathized with his situation, they didn't dare to offer much help and could only pretend not to know. Theo Chin's days were getting tougher. That day, just as he had packed his meal and was about to head home, he was stopped by old Zhong from the logistics department. "Theo Chin, leaving work early every day like this is creating a very bad impression." Old Zhong looked at him sideways. "What, do you still think you're the son of a high-ranking official?" Someone nearby snidely remarked. "He's the son of a bad element, so of course he puts on airs." Theo Chin clenched the lunchbox tightly, his knuckles turning white, but he could only lower his head and say, "Director Zhong, my mother is seriously ill and bedridden. Old Zhong waved his hand impatiently. "Who doesn't have difficulties at home if you need to take care of a patient? Then submit a resignation request. Don't hog the position without doing any work." In his previous life, he was a high-ranking official who never bowed his head to anyone. But in this life, he had no choice but to lower his noble head and put on a smiling face for others. After everyone had laughed their fill, they finally let him leave. When he returned home, Chin's mother noticed his expression was off and cautiously asked, "Theo, is someone at work giving you a hard time?" Theo Chin forced a smile and placed the meal in front of his mother. "Nothing like that. Please eat while it's still warm." Watching his mother struggle to swallow, Theo Chin felt a pang of sorrow in his heart. He remembered going to see El Lin yesterday, the woman who had once vowed to share both joy and hardship. Yet she gave him two choices. El Lin stood in the hospital corridor, her tone icy cold. "Either publicly disown your family in the newspaper, or we get a divorce. I will never quit my job to take care of a hemiplegic elderly person." Theo Chin could hardly believe his ears. "El Lin, those are my parents," El Lin said agitatedly, "but they will ruin my future too." "Theo Chin, have you ever thought about me? If we get labeled the same way as your father, our lives will be over. I worked so hard to become a chief physician. I won't allow it." "Theo Chin, don't say I'm heartless. Blame your father's background. Blame your mother for being a burden." Staring at the face he had been obsessed with for a lifetime, Theo Chin felt lost. In this life, he finally caught up to the light he had always yearned for. But why was reality far from perfect? In his previous life, although the Chin family was not as prominent as the Bai family, they were at least stable. In this life, the Chin family had completely fallen into ruin, while the Bai family was thriving. In her previous life, Sky Bai willingly gave up her job to take care of his family. In this life, El Lin wants to draw a clear line with his parents. In his previous life, he regretted missing his true love for the rest of his life. In this life, he made up for the regret but began to long for the warm home from his previous life. The aroma of cooking and cheerful laughter from other families outside the window made this small room feel even more lifeless. Theo Chin silently cleared the dishes when he suddenly heard his mother softly say from behind, If only you had married Sky back then, son." His hand paused, hot water splashing onto the back of it, yet he felt no pain. The path was chosen by oneself. No matter how difficult, one must persevere. 27. Mrs. Cheen, bedridden with hemiplegia, gradually began to slur her words. Theo Cheen grew anxious and repeatedly took his mother to the hospital. The doctor said, "I need to take my medicine on time and take good care of myself. Maybe it can control the progression." Theo Cheen went to beg El Lin again. He was truly unwilling to accept it. After finally being reborn, how could he let his life become so miserable? By that time, the incident involving Cheen's father had long passed and did not implicate Theo Cheen. El Lin seemed to let go of her worries, out of consideration for their past relationship. She still went home with Theo Cheen. Theo Cheen was very happy. He felt that he would never make the wrong choice in this lifetime. The difficulties are temporary, as long as they endure for a few years. Everything will be fine. In stark contrast to the Cheen family's gloom and despair, Sky Bai's life was becoming increasingly brilliant. She devoted herself wholeheartedly to medical research and practice, relying on her profound accumulation from her past life and her nimble hands in this life. Her golden needle techniques became increasingly exquisite, combined with the Bai family's secret formulas. She has overcome several difficult medical cases and published numerous highly influential academic papers. She is no longer just a well-known doctor at the military hospital but has also become a rising star in the national field of traditional Chinese medicine. Awards and honors followed one after another, and she repeatedly stood on higher podiums, receiving praise and recognition from all sides. Sky Bai was happy, genuinely happy, in this lifetime. She no longer had to look up to the achievements of her peers, nor did she have to grieve in the dead of night over her inability to hold a silver needle again. Through her own efforts and talent, she earned the dignity and glory that belonged to the name Sky Bai. No one would habitually add the prefix Old Cheen's daughter-in-law when introducing her anymore. When people mentioned her, they would say, "That's Dr. Sky Bai." Or "That's the daughter of the Bai family leader." Her medical skills are truly remarkable. She is Sky Bai, an independent, strong, and shining Sky Bai in her own field. 28. On the day Sky Bai reached her third month of pregnancy, Ji Yu Heng received a top-secret mission notification. Staring at the bright red top-secret stamp on the document, he remained silent for a long time. The night before departure, Ji Yu Heng made a point of coming home early and spent a full 2 hours busy in the small kitchen. When Sky Bai returned from work, the table was already filled with her favorite dishes: steamed fish, sweet and sour pork ribs, stir-fried seasonal vegetables, and a steaming bowl of chicken soup. "What's the special occasion today?" Sky Bai asked in surprise. Then noticed the unmistakable gravity in her husband's expression. Ji Yu Heng pulled out the chair for her, his voice unusually gentle. "I just wanted to cook a meal for you. You're eating for 2 now, so you need to eat more." At the dining table, Ji Yu Heng kept serving food to Sky Bai, but his gaze kept unintentionally drifting to her still flat stomach. Sky Bai put down her chopsticks and gently held his hand. "Ji Yu Heng, is it time for a mission?" Ji Yu Heng paused for a moment, neither admitting nor denying it, but instead held her hand tightly. Sky Bai gently placed his hand on her lower abdomen, where their first child was growing, although they couldn't feel the baby's movements yet. Both of them could sense the weight of that profound hope. "Ji Yu Heng." Sky Bai looked into his eyes, her voice soft yet resolute. "The baby and I will always wait for you. No matter what happens, remember that there will always be someone waiting for you at home." Ji Yu Heng's eyes instantly reddened. He leaned down, pressing his ear against her lower abdomen as if he could hear the baby's heartbeat. "I will," he said hoarsely, "for both of you. I will definitely return safely." That night, the two slept in each other's embrace. Neither spoke another word, yet both held the other's hand tightly. The next morning, when Sky Bai woke up, the other side of the pillow was already empty. On the bedside table lay a letter, the handwriting on the envelope all too familiar to him. "To my dearest Sky and our baby." The letter was brief, just a few short lines, yet it brought tears streaming down Sky Bai's face. "Sky, wait for me to come back and name our child. If it's a boy, call him Jiyu Nyanan. If it's a girl, call her Jiyu Nyaning. May you both have a lifetime of peace." Outside the window, the morning sun was slowly rising. Sky Bai gently stroked her slightly rounded belly and whispered, "Baby, let's wait for Daddy to come home together." A month had passed, and there was no news from Ji Yu Heng. That evening, Father Bai walked heavily to his daughter's house, clutching a telegram in his hand. Seeing her father's grave expression, Sky Bai's heart sank. Sky. Father Bai's voice was hoarse. Ji Yu Hung has gone missing at the border. The teacup in Sky Bai's hand shattered on the floor with a sharp crack. She recalled Theo Chin's past warnings and the fallen comrade surnamed Ji Yu from her previous life. Could it be that the course of fate was truly unchangeable? She gently stroked her noticeably swollen belly. No, it can't be. He promised he would come back. In the days that followed, Sky Bai forced herself to carry on with work as usual. But every night was spent tossing and turning, unable to sleep. She began to comfort herself with the letter Ji Yu Hung had left behind. Nyaning, their children needed a complete home. Just as everyone was gradually losing hope, on a drizzly afternoon, a staggering figure leaning on a tree branch appeared at the hospital entrance. Sky. The familiar call made Sky Bai, who was making rounds, tremble all over. She turned around in disbelief and saw the person she had been missing day and night leaning against the doorframe, covered in mud, his left leg unnaturally bent, yet wearing the smile she knew best. Ji Yu Hung. Sky Bai rushed over to support him, tears blurring her vision. I knew you would come back. Ji Yu Hung smiled weakly. I said I would come back to name the child. It turned out that Ji Yu Hung's squad had been ambushed while returning from a mission, and he was severely injured and fell off a cliff while covering for his comrades. With incredible willpower, he dragged his injured leg through the jungle for over 20 days and finally found his way back. He could have easily gone to a hospital earlier to treat himself, but in order to see Sky Bai sooner, he rushed back with his severely injured body. The hospital immediately organized a consultation with doctors. But the conclusion was disheartening. The leg injury had been neglected for too long, and the nerves were severely damaged, making it unlikely he would ever walk normally again. Sky Bai tightly held Ji Yu Heng's hand and said, "Believe me, I will definitely cure you." She pulled out the Bai family's ancestral medical books and, combining them with her past life experiences, devised a special treatment plan. Every day after work, she would apply acupuncture and administer medicine to Ji Yu Heng. Often working late into the night. Sky, don't overwork yourself. Even if my leg is ruined, I'm still a man and can take on the responsibility of caring for you and our child. Ji Yu Heng looked at his wife's increasingly thin face with heartache. Sky Bai's silver needle trembled slightly in her hand. As long as I'm here, your leg won't be ruined. I will make sure to see you become a great general. On a morning 3 months later, Ji Yu Heng suddenly felt a long-lost tingling pain in his injured leg. Under Sky Bai's astonished gaze, his toes twitched slightly. Ji Yu Heng excitedly hugged his wife. I can feel it, Sky. Your medical skills are truly miraculous. Even the doctors called it a medical miracle. On the day of discharge, Ji Yu Heng held his 1-month-old son and said to Sky Bai, let's call him Nyanan. Only after experiencing life and death do you realize the value of peace. 29. Theo Chin found out that Sky Bai had given birth to a son and sent a gift over. Looking at the silver locket that had been worn around her son's neck in her previous life, Sky Bai frowned but still did not refuse. She occasionally heard news about the Chin family. El Lin did go back, but she could only endure taking care of Chin's mother for a month before she couldn't stand it any longer. The narrow tube-shaped apartment was always filled with the smell of traditional Chinese medicine. Chin's mother, lying paralyzed on the bed, vented all her resentment over the family's downfall onto El Lin. Jinx. Chin's mother would curse in a slurred voice whenever El Lin came near. It's all your fault. You ruined my son. El Lin felt extremely wronged. Mom, be reasonable. What does the Chin family's trouble have to do with me? It's you, Mrs. Chin slapped the bedboard in agitation. If Theo hadn't married you, how could this have happened? Theo Chin was caught in the middle, torn between both sides. He knew better than anyone that today's predicament had nothing to do with El Lin. It was entirely the result of his own choices. But seeing his mother in such pain, he could only gently persuade her, Mom, this really isn't El Lin's fault. Please take your medicine properly. Focusing on recovering your health is what matters most. To Mrs. Chin, such persuasion clearly sounded like he was taking his wife's side. She cursed even more harshly. Get out, all of you, get out. In El Lin's view, Theo Chin's defense was feeble and unconvincing. That day, as soon as she got off work, she heard Mrs. Chin once again making indirect accusations. Married a wife, forgot about your mother, Sky is so much better. Lin finally exploded. Theo Chin, I can't live like this anymore. I've been doing my best to take care of her, but all she ever thinks about is Sky Bai. You don't even refute her. Do you regret marrying me too? Theo Chin didn't know if he would regret it, but he felt that life was indeed not as satisfactory as in his previous life, yet he still firmly believed that such hard times were only temporary. Once the policies improved, everything would get better. But facing Lin's outburst, he also felt somewhat powerless. This kind of life filled with constant arguments was not what he wanted. He looked helplessly at Lin. She is my mother. Lin burst into tears. I work myself to the bone every day, and when I come home, I still have to put up with this kind of treatment. I really can't take it anymore. Theo Chin, please let me go. Can we just get a divorce? Hearing the word divorce again, Theo Chin didn't feel the same heartache as the first time. For Lin, he had given up Sky Bai, refused treatment in the ruins, and ruined his own future. For her, he created a rift with his parents, making his seriously ill mother's situation even worse, but he never regretted it. He also felt sorry for Lin, sorry that she had to endure such a hard life with him, but as long as they persevered, everything will be fine. He pleaded with Lin, just hold on for a few more years. Everything will be fine. You can't let go of your mother, and I don't want to be a wicked daughter-in-law. The best outcome is for us to separate, otherwise I'll be driven crazy. And I don't know what I might do then. Despite Theo Chin's insistence, Lin still divorced Theo Chin. Theo Chin locked himself in the room and got completely drunk. Given a second chance at life, he had married the one he loved as he wished, so why did he end up being abandoned by everyone? In his previous life, he achieved great success and had a harmonious family, but in this life, his career was completely ruined, and even his marriage was on the verge of collapse. He had only made one choice. How could things have turned out this way? He just made a choice, so why did he end up with nothing? 30. When news of Theo Chin reached him again, he had been arrested for speculation and profiteering. By then, Ji Yu Hung had become the military district commander. Upon hearing the news, he couldn't help but sigh. How did the once elite soldier end up like this? Sky Bai sighed softly. It's all about timing and fate. In fact, according to the policies at the time, Theo Chin should have been sent to the northwest. It was Sky Bai who had Ji Yu Hung quietly intervene, changing it to a local investigation instead. It wasn't for any other reason, but for Theo Chin's mother. If Theo Chin had been sent away, the elderly woman lying ill in bed would surely not have survived. Theo Chin, who had been released, disappeared with Chin's mother. This departure lasted for 10 years. One afternoon 10 years later, Sky Bai saw a familiar figure in the hospital corridor. Theo Chin stood by the window, his figure thinner than she remembered, but with a newfound calmness between his brows. He stepped forward, his voice raspy with the passage of time. Sky Bai, thank you for what happened back then. Sky Bai calmly corrected, it wasn't for you, it was for Uncle Chin and Auntie Chin. Theo Chin didn't thank her again, but instead shared his experiences over the past 10 years. He took his mother south and, relying on his own abilities, carved out a place for himself there. After the policies improved, he became a successful businessman, but his mother remained forever in that land. As for his father, although he was eventually rehabilitated, his health had long been ruined. Within 2 years of his rehabilitation, he passed away. It's a full 30 years less than the previous life where I lived to 80. Theo Chin smiled bitterly. In my previous life, my regret was Lin. In this life, my regret is my parents. Life is always full of shortcomings. He was just sighing with emotion, thinking that Sky Bai wouldn't understand his words, but Sky Bai said calmly, there is no right or wrong in life, only different choices. As long as it felt worthwhile at the time and you have no regrets later, that's enough. In your previous life, you held on to regrets for decades. In this life, don't leave any more regrets behind. Theo Chin suddenly looked up, understanding something from her clear gaze. You've returned too. Sky Bai nodded. Theo Chin, then do you hate me a lot? Sky Bai shook her head. Why should I hate you? In my past life, it was my own choice, and I should bear all the consequences myself. Theo Chin bowed solemnly to her. I'm sorry for everything in both past and present lives. But I have never regretted it. This time, Skyby did not avoid it and calmly accepted his apology. She knew that a man like Theo Cheen would never regret his own choices. After that, Theo Cheen disappeared. It wasn't until much later that Skyby saw news of him in the newspaper. He had become a famous entrepreneur in the South. He never remarried in his lifetime and donated all his assets to the state after his death.